The year is 1925. At the three-way intersection of Michigan, Northwestern, and alcohol was an explosion of good times. One of them was a liquid you get drunk on. One was maybe the greatest football team in the country, possibly of all time, and the other was Northwestern University. The Wildcats had a hard-fought year. 5 wins, 3 losses, 6 of their 8 games decided by just one possession. But the early November win over Michigan was the crowning achievement. This Michigan team was no joke. Their longtime head coach, Fielding Yost, had called the shots for 23 years. Then he quit last year, took that season off, and quickly came back. Yost would call this 1925 team both the greatest he ever saw or coached, a statement he stood on for years after retirement. It's not a dumb thing to say. The Michigan schedule, excluding that Northwestern loss, well, it was kind of good. They hadn't allowed a point, like a single other team, to score at all. Illinois gave him hell behind legend of the time halfback Red Grange, but no one put a red mark on the schedule, not except the Purple Cats. In front of 40,000 people in Chicago, water was dumped endlessly by the Sky People. An estimated 1-inch thick puddle sat on top of the grass field without place to drain away. The bottoms of players' shoes became invisible with every step they took, sinking into the unknown territory of the ground. Both universities' marching bands declined to step anywhere near the bog at halftime, rendering the ceremony mute. During the break, the scoreboard read 3-0 in favor of the purple home team. Northwestern had earned their points through a strategy that is practically extinct, though still very much legal in the sport today. A practice, often laughed at, is what scored the first points on the University of Michigan football this year. The first down punt. Genuinely a common part of early football. Teams in awful weather games like this one, or just in defensive dominated matchups, would pretty much just give up and punt on first down. The phrase flipping the field position dates back to a time where it was very important to do so. Occasionally, you would get teams punting back and forth to each other on every first down, while one side slowly pinned the other right in front of their end zone. It was an odd time. On the first play of the football game, after Northwestern received the opening kickoff, they punted the ball. I'm not sure how you could wave the white flag harder than punting before your first play from scrimmage. Of course, a Michigan player tried to pick up the punt, failed spectacularly, and Northwestern got the ball on the 3-yard line. They ran 3 plays to try and score, lost 15 total yards across them, and kicked a field goal instead that barely made it over the bottom crossbar. It could be in contention for the ugliest 3 points ever scored in a football game. This was an excellent stage setting for the day. Michigan's defense and Northwestern's offense both pretty much kept playing like that. The game saw 1 first down in 60 minutes between both teams. It was a punting battle. One newspaper noted that punts occurred individually on each first, second, third, and fourth down during the game. But we got one more piece of innovation. This midseason college football game holds a lot more historical weight than most. In the third quarter, Michigan had the field position advantage. After a punt and a defensive stop, they had Northwestern's offense pinned on their own 1-yard line on 4th down. Good territory. The choice Northwestern made here would change the rulebook forever. They took a knee. Right in the end zone, the coach told his quarterback to go down. Michigan got 2 points for this. However, under official 1925 college football rules, after a safety, the offense got the ball back. Northwestern bit the 2 points, then got the ball back at the 30-yard line with plenty of breathing room. After that, them and Michigan kept playing the same game they had been all day, but there wasn't enough time for Michigan to get back in position and score. The game ended 3-2. Sports writers across the country chimed in with high regard for the Northwestern head coach, calling the move the deciding factor in an otherwise featureless game. The very next season, with a flaw in the rulebook having been exploited, a blemish in the usually aesthetically perfect way that football is scored, they patched it up, and the team on defense would be given the ball after a safety in addition to the 2 points. It's always awesome when someone finds a trick to abuse that's fully legal and you can't do anything about it because it's within the rules. Unfortunately, football is pretty good about patching them up before the rest of the world can enjoy it too much. But wait a minute, we haven't talked about alcohol. Oh dear God, there's more. Both teams' seasons ended. Michigan near the top of the country, Northwestern the thorn in their side. Now, there were a few undefeated and untied teams, so national champion was out of the conversation for UM, despite many people in the press trying to push for them to still be considered. It was seen as a very good football team, with a weird, almost unexplainable loss to Northwestern. Fielding Yost's words were being felt across the country. But another question was in the air. Both teams played in the Big Ten Conference. They were the 2 best teams in that conference, each of them with just 1 conference loss. But Northwestern was Michigan's loss. They had the tiebreaker, right? Not actually. Winning percentage was the decider. Northwestern, playing 2 less games against conference opponents due to the shoddy and unofficial schedule making of the era, was somehow more applicable to Big Ten standings than their direct head-to-head win over Michigan. There was no official conference championship or titles at this point, or even people to decide it. It was sort of a nebulous thing. So one day, after sports writers across the country had mostly agreed Michigan were the Big Ten champs, head coach Fielding Yost gave members of his team some congratulatory little golden footballs that represented a conference championship, just a reward from coach to players. Somehow, however it did in 1925, word got through the grapevine, and this news reached students at Northwestern. They were upset. Honestly, understandably upset. What happened next? Well, the school collectively rioted. An old abandoned frat house was entirely covered in oil, then set on fire. That brought firemen, naturally, to put it out. The mob didn't like them either. Fire hoses were cut and sliced open while being used to not allow them to put it out. Another large fire started in the middle of Fountain Square. It went on for so long that the town mayor got word of chaos breaking out, showed up to the angry mob, got up and tried to calm everyone down and restore order, and was beaten up by various rioters. One newspaper the next day put it real bluntly. Mayor Bartlett appeared, he was handled roughly by the mob, and retreated. Other accounts claim he was knocked fully unconscious. Okay, that's all for now, Mr. Mayor. The town's police chief had his car overturned, flipped on its head. One of his officers was attacked and broke 2 ribs. At some point, the police just began blindly firing tear gas into the crowd. It's worth noting that at another point, the mob, fighting with clubs, fists, and pieces of wood, fought so successfully against the city's police force that the cops collectively agreed to leave and come back later. The definition of fraternity is a group of individuals organized for a common purpose. This was now, more than ever, a frat house, and it belonged to the people. The town mayor's awake, likely a little shaken up, but back on his feet. He had that angry kind of adrenaline pumping now. He began openly threatening and even taunting the crowd. He was getting enjoyment out of it by saying he was going to order police to shoot to kill. He specified that the order would be carried out using machine guns. There were over 2,000 students in the riot. They clashed with over 100 police officers on the scene. You may think they had the advantage, but numbers had already lied to these people before. They fought as though they were outnumbered. Control was lost. Football was disputed. A college was without civilization. Alcohol was involved. Most students were getting progressively drunker as the riot went along. Momentum for the overthrowing of the world was lost when the angry mob tried and failed to burn down the wooden bleachers at their own football stadium. The bleachers would be replaced with concrete the next year. The idea was unsuccessful after a tense standoff against, and I have to quote this part, policemen, the Evansville Fire Department, and an organized crowd of World War veterans. These kids were taking on the goddamn American military 7 years after World War I. They had no fear. They were feared. The captain of the football team, a member of the riot himself, actually quickly realized that the bleachers should be spared. After they had been doused in gasoline and were ready to ignite, he reminded everyone that they could be burning up next year's football season too, and the mob showed a shocking level of understanding for a mob, agreeing with his concern and stomping out what bit of the fire had begun with their feet. This is a leader guiding an army. This is Leonidas' Spartans. They continued to riot away from the field. At about midnight, the hoorah finally burnt out. They weren't pushed out or defeated. They left on their own terms. The police thanked them sincerely. The mob slowly dispersed, with rioters walking back home and going to sleep like nothing happened. At least 8 students were arrested the next day. It was also the next day that Northwestern's head football coach and that football captain who was a part of the riot and saved the bleachers came together. They drafted a telegram and sent it to the president of the University of Michigan. It read, "In view of the remarkable showing that has been made by the 1925 football team of the University of Michigan, we believe that the University of Michigan is entitled to sole and undivided honors in the conference, and we wish you to know that Northwestern makes no claim for any share in them, but regards it as a privilege to be even for a few minutes placed in a class with the University of Michigan's team." Youch. A slap in the face to Northwestern students who just gave up their heart, body, and soul last night. As soon as news broke publicly that this announcement was made, Northwestern school officials began fearing an aftershock. Convinced that another group was going to come and finish the job of burning down the wooden bleachers, the school sent out a patrolman who spent the rest of that next day driving around the football field in a car that had a machine gun mounted to its top. A shoot-to-kill order was actually officially given to police. Anyone attempting to trouble the football stands would be shot on sight. No more half measures. This specific article, it's funny, they actually mentioned the phrase machine gun 2 times. Once in connection with a story they were doing on American naval defenses, and the second time about a way to fend off college students at an almost Ivy League university. This, well, it might be the best story of all time. Tragically, it's almost been lost to it. When you Google Northwestern 1925 riot, nothing comes up. You have to comb through the old newspapers to find that there is actually a lot of information that was written about this at the time. We have to do our part. We can't let this become lost history. This is valuable. This has to be able to teach someone something.